Active listening is the most important skill in sales. If you really think about it and you really get down to the nitty-gritty, you could say there's like only two skills you need to develop to have massively impact in your sales goals. The first is listening, so that you understand how the prospect feels, what he's saying, what he's thinking, what he believes. The other part is then taking that and redirecting the conversation in a way that advances the sales. So you could say, on the one hand, you have the listening part. On the other hand, you have the control or the redirecting part, so that you actually give direction to what you now listen to. Because when you think about it, when you do a sales call, you're really listening to someone, his current situation, or even her current situation. And you're just trying to figure out what is their current situation, first of all, and how do they feel about it? Where do they want to take it, and things like that. So every time from the moment you are in a sales call, you have to listen. You have to see, and you have to observe. How is the prospect reacting? How is he feeling? What is he saying? And what is he really saying? What is he really feeling? And that takes a lot of attention. It's a skill that you can train, but if you don't give it energy, you won't develop this skill. So once you get to the core, once you really understand what he is saying, what he's feeling, what's going on in his mind, now you can take that and think about it like, where do I take the conversation from here? What question probably do you ask next in order to advance the conversation? For example, let's say your prospect is saying, well, yes, so I would like to get some extra leads or whatever. We haven't been getting a lot of clients lately, and I think that some leads would advance the situation. Then well, he actually has a problem, right? He's admitting that he has a problem, right? But then you also need to listen to his tone, because that's one of the most important things in a sales call. He might say that with a joking tone, a little bit like aloof. If he does that, then you might need to challenge that to say, well, is that really how you feel? You said, you're not getting the amount of clients that you're getting right now. Is that correct? Like, how do you feel about the amount of clients you're getting right now? So the sharper really you can observe, the more detailed you can observe what he's really saying, what he's really feeling, the more you have to work with. So really that's half of the most important things you do in a sales call. The other half is like determining, once you've figured out what they feel, where do you take it next? And that's another skill you need to develop. You need to develop a skill of how you can guide towards the sale. And that doesn't mean that every interaction will or should be a sale. But the point is, you should advance it so that you're asking the next important question that's leading towards a sale. And maybe it won't lead towards a sale, but at least you're advancing the conversation. Because you have some beginning sales rep just stay stuck in building rapport or being nice and friendly. So that's why you really need to advance. You can't stay stuck in one phase. So that's really what I'm doing in my sales calls for the past week. I think that's how I close a client. Probably I was a little bit lucky as well because he really had a problem. But if I didn't listen well to him, and if I didn't advance towards the sale, he wouldn't have closed either. So even if your prospect has a problem, you still need to not screw up the sale, right? You still need to be there that he can see you as someone worthy to buy from. You don't need to always massively influence everyone to get the sale. A lot of people that are coming to your calls will be there because they have something they want to change already. And so part of it is about influencing, if you have someone that's not completely ready yet. But a lot of it is just, not screwing up, letting your prospect buy. But that only comes if you develop, if you listen well to what he is saying, what he is really saying, what he is really feeling. The sharper you can do that, the sharper you can ask your questions, because now you have more data to work with, right? So if you know exactly how he's feeling, opposed to a little bit how he's feeling, a little bit how he's thinking, you don't have that much information to work with. But if he sees that you're really listening, first of all, that's going to make a very positive impression. That he sees that you care and you're doing effort to be there for him. But if you're also on the ball with actually your analysis and your listening, your active listening, then you can make really sharp observations. And that in itself will make them feel like they are listened to. But what I've been saying is the next step is then also developing that skill to guide. So you don't necessarily need to be a big talker in sales calls. In fact, usually that's counterproductive in sales because sales is problem solving. But just listening is not enough, because just listening will get you, they'll talk, they'll keep talking, they will go off board. When they feel a little bit uncomfortable, they'll go a different direction. So you also need the skill to set boundaries and to guide always towards the sale, right? That doesn't mean that you're always going to get a sale, but it just means that you're moving towards it, moving conversation towards it. I hope that makes sense, guys. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and check out the next one if you want. See you guys next time. Cheers.